I'm Jennifer Boyott. I'm the host of A Conversation with Leading Peacemakers. This is the 11th edition of Sitting in Circle with some wonderful people who are serving their community and the world. And I guess you call it our motto is, it is time for our leaders to be peacemakers and for peacemakers to be our leaders. This 11th edition is actually our first international edition. We've actually had guests with backgrounds from all around the world, but we have Sarah Gough here sitting in Vancouver, and I'm so excited to welcome her. She is the executive director of an organization called Play for Peace. She's had a lot of global leadership in a lot of different roles. In Play for Peace, she has the opportunity to bring people together from all backgrounds to do play as a way to overcome conflict and misunderstanding. I'm looking forward to her telling a lot more about that. Welcome, Sarah.
Thank you. Hello.
And I'm also happy to welcome Jill Gonzalez, who is the Executive Director of Women's Storybook Project of Texas. And they have a really unique mission as well, where she gets to connect mothers who are incarcerated with their children through reading. And she brings her background as a teacher and reading specialist to that. And yeah, I'm really glad to be able to hear some of her experiences. Hi, Jill.
Hi there. Thank you for having me.
Thank you. And we're just going to go ahead and start right in. I'm going to ask Sarah to let us know how you have come to be doing what you're doing, and then go ahead and tell us what you are in the middle of right now.
Sure. Well, thank you so much for having me on here. I'm really thrilled to be part of this circle, this conversation, and to meet both of you. So thank you for that. My journey to peace building was a little bit winding. When I was growing up, peace building was either sort of connected to a strong religious background, or maybe sort of considered part of, the hippie movement from the 60s. It wasn't really considered its own academic field or really taken all that seriously, I'll have to say, even in the international arena. And so my path here really was through community service. As a child, I was a bit shy and awkward, potentially still now as well. But I found that doing something productive, I was able to connect with others. I was able to learn about the world and gain some new skills. And so by high school, I was volunteering at a kids' cancer ward. I was part of a homeless commission coalition. I co-founded an organization, after-school club called Children for Children, where we just did acts of community service. So this is really where I sort of found my expression, my identity, my space where I was able to connect with others and learn about the world. And so I continued on doing that sort of as a volunteer experience. Through college, I worked at a crisis center. And really in that process, the team of social workers became my heroes, just in terms of their ability to navigate crises and resolve conflicts, and just the work that they were doing. So in a last minute sort of midnight decision, I applied to an MSW program, a Master's of Social Work, and I started focusing on that for my career. So that's where I really started. But what I found was, in doing these community service projects, the good that we were trying to do for the community, for the world, for a group of people, wasn't very successful or wasn't very sustainable if there wasn't a level of cooperation, understanding, or trust within the group we were working with or within the community we were working with. And so I started to see this common theme across all of these different projects that I was working in. Um, and decided that I wanted to dig into this more. How could we build more cooperation and understanding so that all the good that we wanted to do in the world would actually be helpful and sustainable? So I really found the answer to this in peace education, which I feel was a growing field at the time. Now there's expanded out. Now there's social emotional learning, and there's a few other fields that touch on some of the skill sets I was looking for when I moved into peace. But I really do feel that the field of peace building and peace education has a more holistic view of not just psychology and development, but also sociology, history, and all of the other pieces as well. So that's how I got started. And after grad school, I was offered a 9-month contract with an organization called Play for Peace to support programs in a Central American country just emerging from a 36-year civil war called Guatemala. I ended up staying past my 9 months over 20 years in Guatemala. And in that journey, I volunteered for years and Play for Peace, also did a lot of international aid work, and then was given the role of executive director in 2010. And Play for Peace is an organization that it's an international peace building organization dedicated to bringing people together across divides with experiential learning, cooperative play, and community service in areas of conflict around the world. So primarily we train young people to use play in teaching cooperation and communication, inclusion, and other positive life skills, as well as lead community service projects in their communities, in their neighborhoods. We have programs in over 20 countries and volunteers across the globe. Through this process, it has become my life's work, and I now do believe that anyone can be a peace builder, and by adopting attitudes and strategies, any actions that promote understanding and cooperation, that peace building is really not just limited to diplomats or religious groups or yogis. It really is an approach that individuals from all walks of life can incorporate into their daily actions. So that's my story.
Thank you so much, and that's a great start. I do have some thoughts already, but we're gonna maybe do some more just inner talking a little bit later, but that's wonderful. Thank you, Sarah.
Thank you.
Jill, what's your story? How are you in the middle of such a wonderful project, and tell us more about it also.
So my story is that from early ages, I wanted to be a teacher. I had a younger sister who was just 2.5 years younger than me. And I was in a family of readers. And because I was in a family of readers, I wanted to read so I could read to her and teach her. So my love for books and for education started very early. And I was really blessed to have the family that did that. We were a library family. We read in the evenings, and even my dad, he wasn't a book reader, but he would read the paper. And it was a nice time to be with each other, and we had things to talk about. Sorry, excuse me. So as I grew, I was raised in a religious family as well. So we were taught peace, and we were taught that it's our service and peacemaking are part of who we are. And that was very important to me. And I did, like Sarah, did community service through high school. And during college, I, of course, went to school to be a teacher. And during college, the fire was really lit under me for folks who needed extra help. And whether that be the homeless population or a refugee population, it became important to me to serve, not just to educate, but to serve. And so I really intended to go in the Peace Corps after college, and it was quite dangerous at that time. And my parents said, please find something domestic. So I found a program in Texas, and I came down here as a volunteer teacher and realized pretty quickly that even though I knew how to teach, what happens when you have a child in third or fourth or fifth grade who doesn't know how to read? So I went back to school at UT and got my master's as a reading specialist, and really, really enjoyed that work and did that for quite a while. So after a full career as a teacher and reading specialist, I um, I was ready to make a change. And I had served on the board for Reading is Fundamental here in Austin and really loved that program. And a program coordinator position came open, and I thought, well, that's me. And so I went, was hired there and did that for 8 years and really enjoy connecting families through stories. Because there's so many stories that if you were to sit down with someone in a conversation and say, you should be nice, that you can do that, but it won't be highly successful. But if you sit down with a story, for example, Love You Forever or The Invisible String, and read it, you're going to help families learn these lessons without saying, this is what you should do. But you can learn healthy habits through books and play through books too. So that is my passion, connecting families through literature. Well, a friend of mine sent me a job description for a women's storybook project of Texas, and I had never heard of them. And so I went to the website, I read the job description, and I'm watching the video and I'm sobbing and telling my husband, I have to do this. This is for me. So I applied and have been the executive director for 7 years. And it is the greatest joy because we serve and connect children to their incarcerated mothers through the power and the joy of literature. So our volunteers and our team leaders go into prisons every month and offer moms the opportunity to read to their children. They get to read and record, and then we send the recording and the book to the child wherever they are. And hearing a story from your mom is amazing, but getting to hear a message and getting to hear they love you and don't forget to brush your teeth or listen to grandma or happy birthday, it's life-changing because mom records once and the child can listen to the story 100 times. And it helps to heal. All children of incarcerated have trauma. There's something that led to that, but it helps to heal that trauma and restore some normalcy to an otherwise very fretful situation. So it's been a great gift for me to be able to combine my passion of children's literature and promoting books and literacy in addition to helping those children who are largely forgotten and their moms. So that's my story.
Thank you so much. Well, I'd like to give each of you the opportunity if anything's coming up for you, any comments or questions for each other, you're welcome to go ahead to do that. Is anything coming up for you about that at this point?
Sarah, I would love to know more about the activities that Play for Peace does, or I understand what you do, but how is it implemented?
Sure, absolutely. So we go into communities that invite us in, which is a really important part of how we travel across the world, which is person to person, a word of mouth interaction. And so a community will identify that they are really needing to tackle a divide. Maybe it's a religious divide, a racial divide, in their community, or engage youth more in their community, often in countries that are post war, high conflict, high tension areas. And we'll go in, we have trainers, we have a group of certified trainers across the globe that speak different languages. They're experts in experiential learning. So they're facilitators of this cooperative play. They're, team building activities, problem solving initiatives, all of these type of activities. They are experts in facilitating that. And they go into the communities and we have a training program. So a group of youth in the community will be trained how to facilitate the cooperative play. So they really become the leaders of change in their community while gaining a really important skill set for themselves. So they go through training they experience for themselves first as a group of youth, all the cooperative play activities that teach a range of different things, like from cooperation to respect to conflict resolution to inclusion, all of these different things that are really important skill sets that we don't necessarily learn at school or at home. And so they're given this opportunity to learn these skills in a really fun way, in a really engaging way, in a way that engages their body, mind, and heart, because it is playful, it is active, it is in a group, it's connected. And so these group of youth become youth facilitators, and then they work with younger kids in their community. So it really is connecting young people 15 to 25 generally become the youth facilitators, and they lead what we call practice peace sessions in their communities. So they'll have an activity where they bring kids from different backgrounds together, and they'll lead a series of cooperative play activities on a theme or on several themes, and have the kids get to know each other through play, get to work together, get to break stereotypes down that they might have. Our most recent club was actually formed in Poland. So there's an outdoor education organization that called KIK that is really well known, has 50-year history in Poland of leading hiking, kayaking expeditions in the outdoors for families, and which is a really lovely, important service in itself. But then they also have a deep-rooted connection to community service. So when their country was flooded with refugees, with the war in Ukraine, particularly Ukrainian refugees, they took it upon themselves to actively include kids from refugee families into their camps, into their summer camps, into their after-school programs, and they needed a tool to do that. So they were experts in teaching how to hike and belay and all the things that you would do in outside education. But there's a certain skill set of intercultural communication, of trauma-informed facilitation with kids that you really, really do need to know to make these experiences positive when they were bringing together Ukrainian and Polish kids in summer camps. And so we began to work with them, and out of that grew our first Play for Peace Club in Warsaw, where there's a group of teenagers, both from the Ukraine and from Poland, and actually there's, I think, a young man from Chechnya as well, so a few different areas. And they are, they've received training, and they've just begun to go into refugee centers around the city and lead practice peace sessions for the kids in the refugee centers who are in dire need of connection, of joy, of play, and skill sets as well, because we find that oftentimes in difficult living situations like kids in refugee camps and constrained areas, as you obviously know, they need skill sets of how to live together with kids who might not be from their neighborhood originally and have gone through a lot of things and are struggling with a lot of things. So hopefully that gives you an overview a little bit more of how we work, and then we try and connect up and provide activities and curriculum and support to our Play for Peace clubs and the adults that serve these clubs around the world. So from Africa to Central America to Asia to Europe to the US.
Thank you. It's beautiful how you implement that.
That's wonderful. And you know what I'm hearing both kind of, well, yeah, like a theme that's kind of coming through that I think probably is that what you were saying, Jill, about telling is probably the least effective way of teaching. And sometimes it doesn't teach. So you each kind of have a different way of doing it, but it's showing instead of or yeah, hearing a story, or getting to actually kinetically do something in terms of play, that imparts these kinds of principles. That's really cool. That's really beautiful. Um, I wonder if Jill, if you could maybe add your 2 cents to this, because I several of my guests over time have had connections with organizations that serve prisons in various ways. And I feel like one of the movements and kind of ways that we've had to change our minds as I want to say a nation, or, obviously the whole globe if we can, is prisons were kind of invented to put a really big gloss over this, but invented to kind of separate from society. Like, if you go and think about what you've done for a while, and then you can come back, and that's not really, that whole dynamic is not working anymore. We have to bring or preserve the community, or probably they never had any to begin with, which is probably one of the main reasons they're finding themselves where they're at. And so also that's what I'm hearing, and what you're doing is that community piece of keep surrounding. I don't know if you've ever thought of it that way, or what your thoughts are as I'm kind of.
So I think those are really valuable thoughts. And the longer I'm in the field, the more I'm learning that prisons, while intended to reform people and separate them, and precisely what you said, you think about what you did. Separation, I believe, was intended to be the punishment. Being apart from society is the punishment. So prisons were as punishment, but not for punishment. And that has changed. Prisons right now are being used for punishment. And with the advent of the 3 strikes, you're out, that's when, at least in Texas, we had a huge influx of women into the prison system. And so there's many more women than the male-based system was built for. And the trauma that it's inflicting on both the women and their children is doing more harm than good. And so what we try to do through our, it's a tiny program, it's a drop in the bucket, and we want to grow. But in the program that we have, we begin with respect. We don't want to know what mom did. We don't want to know why she's there. We know she has children, and we know they need her. And so beginning from there, and then beginning with respect and using mom's name. Mom is not a number. Mom has a name. So we call our residents or our participants our moms, and we call them by name when we visit. And it's so important that when they walk into our class, they know that it's a safe space. because we know from brain-based education that people don't learn under threat. And so it has to be a safe space. So using some of those principles of just human respect, family connections, joy through the stories, that's what helps people and make a change, rather than being ostracized or being set apart. And so there is some work going on in the prisons, at least the women's prisons in Texas, of cognitive changes and changing your thinking and learning how to live in society. And those are important. And it's important to heal the relationships that have been broken. And so I know there's so much work to do in the men's prisons as well. We're just in the space of the women's. So we're going to start there first.
And I like that you brought up the safe space piece, because through this, I can't really think of anything safer than getting read to or being able to read. That's very safe thing. And also the play situations, that the implication there is this safety that you're creating. Go ahead, Sarah.
Yeah, for sure. I would say, I mean, there's the beauty of sort of the the work that you're doing. I mean, I think disconnection is the greatest threat to peace. And so anywhere, any way that you can build connection between moms and kids, between kids in their community, between kids in their school and their teachers, is just so vital for their development and their hope for the future. So, some of the outcomes we look at from our programs are around hope, have feelings of hope increased. And these are kids who have seen war, they've seen death, they've seen really terrible things, they've maybe seen their villages burned or their homes, taken down. And so without hope, how can you even focus on building any sort of skills or building a life towards, being a positive part of society without that? And so I feel almost to what the Storybook project is also doing is giving hope, because that connection and that the mother and child have, and then the hope that it could bring of a relationship could be really, really significant. And so we try and increase feelings of safety, because that's also another really core component to the traumatized brain, of course, can only learn new skills and grow and develop with increased feelings of safety. And so in our play activities, we do sort of open and close with a ritual. We have ways to have sort of behavior contracts that the kids themselves develop. So they begin creating the rules of respect and the way they want to be treated and how they treat others. And so creating that safe space is really, really important. And many of our kids feel the most safe from not only their experience within the activities, but then also this network, the social network that's being built. And I think that's also what the Storybook Project is also doing. It's rebuilding the community fabric in some ways. So if you're feeling very alone and scared, it's very hard to have hope for the future. But if you've got a place where you can feel safe, you get to engage, you have connection, you have a social network that that you can reach out to for support. All of those things are really, really critical, and to opening up your worldview. So the other critical component of the work that we do, and I think the work we both do, is opening people's minds to different perspectives, to different life experiences, to different life stories. And so, by bringing together people from different backgrounds, and having get to know you exercises, you do just get to know about someone else, how the foods they might eat, or what makes them happy, what makes them scared, all those different things, just opening up the worldview, rebuilding community fabric, I think is something that is really a key component to peace building that seems to be interlaced between what we both do.
That's why I like to do these, because you can just be doing something different, and yet I don't want to say the same thing, but it's all part of that fabric there. It's wonderful. So who gets to pick the books, Jill? Who picks the stories?
So our mission is very unique because the books are going to the children, but we don't ever meet the children. So we work through moms, because last year we served, I think, 99 counties in Texas, and there's no way we can give out or deliver those books. However, our work was done through 11 women's facilities, 11 women's prisons. So each time the team leader goes, if there are book requests, we fill them to the best of our ability. And then the team leaders and volunteers set up the room like a book fair. So moms come in and we have an opening circle, and then women are invited to go shop. So they choose the books for their children. Now, the first time that we go, we use a beautiful book called The Invisible String, and it's about everyone around the world being connected through love, which is the invisible string. It's by Patrice Karst, and it's just the most lovely book. And a lot of moms will pick that, or they'll go to the book tables and say, oh, I used to read Skippy John Jones to my kids. I'm going to read that. Or I know my son loves Dogman, or I know, oh, Goodnight Moon. And then they'll get all excited and they'll choose a book from when their kids were little. And the first time there's a lot of that. And then the second month, when we come back, a lot of what we hear is, oh, my kids loved the book, but they said, Mom, I like Goodnight Moon, but do they have Fancy Nancy? Or I liked it, but do they have, who is the Greek god? Percy Jackson. And so it starts a conversation between mom and child. And so moms pick the books. And as far as picking the books for the office, the only book we buy is The Invisible String. All our other books are donated either through local bookstores, holiday book drives, or the kindness of people's hearts. So every once in a while we'll get a grant and then we'll purchase books, but most of them are just donated.
That's so cool. That's nice. Sarah, when how do I put this? So do people, if people want to contact you, like if that's in their community, if people listening, they're seeing a need with their youth, do you work in the United States as well, or are you
We
pretty much
do.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, we actually just in the middle of a project right now in Denver with another actually outdoor ed organization, sort of a common theme there. Not always. We work with a lot of different types of schools and nonprofit organizations and even community groups. They can contact us. And we do have a training process for youth to go through. And they're invited to either go through the training and just have a project like that and be done, or they're invited to stay part of the community where it's an ongoing sort of learning experience. And so, yeah, absolutely. We've had a lot of programs in Chicago. We were partnered with an organization, an after-school program in Los Angeles. with actually a church in Idaho that had wanted to bring together the farming community, which was a traditionally sort of white population that had over generations now included immigrants from Latin America. And so they do a summer camp every summer. So yes, absolutely, you can reach out to us. We have training programs that are available either on person, and we're moving to also online training programs as well, because there's also areas that we can't reach and travel. And you're welcome to do those training programs and or join our community and connect with the other youth groups that are around the world.
Sweet. And by the way, if you could just go ahead and jump in if you guys think of things or whatever. I'm just kind of going through the things that inspired me a little bit here. I liked how you said, excuse me, Jill, when you were saying about you were kind of drawn to people who need extra help. And I love the way you said that, because for people who are going to be listening to this into the future, and definitely part of the reason I do these interviews is to inspire other people to do what's inside of them. And we think, oh, I have to have a big organization, I have to have all the degrees for it, or some kind of funding, whatever. But I think if we can just think about people who might need extra help, or how we might have needed extra help. Gee, if I had this little extra help, but how can I do that for other people too? So I just love that. I don't know if you have any other thoughts about that, or even Sarah, if you have thoughts about what that idea.
So one of the things that I think about that is you have to be careful to fill your cup, because anyone in service has a tendency to burn out. However, one of the things that I think about peace in relation to justice is everyone is not in the same boat. We're just not. Some people are on yachts, some people are in rowboats, some people are in canoes. And but no matter how hard we want it to be true, we don't have an equal footing. And there are brilliant, brilliant people who never had a chance to show their brilliance, who never had a chance to have what we consider a normal upbringing. And so if we can show folks that it's possible to be respected, to be cherished, to be loved, what they can do is amazing. I used to, when I was just teaching in the classroom, I love fifth graders, because fifth graders have more talent than anyone in the world, and they don't know it. And if you invite them in a non-threatening way to do something, they will blow up the world. It's amazing what fifth graders can do. They just haven't been given the permission to do it, because nobody, it's scary to let someone who's 12, do a big thing. However, I learned from them that, the untapped potential of people is just ridiculous and joyful. And so bringing that to disempowered people is both peaceful and joyful, because you can help open someone else's eyes. And I also think the bottom side of that too, or the not downside, it's not a downside, is just realizing what we don't need. There's so much that we don't need. And so, because we're especially in the developed countries, we're so consumer oriented, we're very me oriented and somewhat selfish. And if we can realize that we don't need the latest, greatest, newest, fastest, best thing, if we can share that with someone else so that they can have a more equal footing, it will help us all. And so I love learning. And so this has given me the best chance to learn both from my students and from my clients now, that if we share and allow other people to grow, we're going to grow too.
Wonderful, thank you. And Sarah, earlier I heard you say something about the attitudes needed for peace. I think that's kind of how you put it. Maybe I got that wrong a little bit, but I just wondered what that list is for you, or what go into that a little bit more about that, what that means for you.
Well, I mean, in the context of this conversation, I would say, you know, just from what was just said, is the learning mindset. I think that if you go into peace building with a desire to change someone, to make them better, or to save someone even, it can really backfire on so many levels. And I think that if you go into peace building with a mindset of learning, of learning new perspectives, learning new skills, learning new ways of seeing the world, being open to question what you thought you knew about how things worked, what you thought you knew about yourself, and really come from that place of the learning mindset. I think that is the key sort of framework to be in this field, because we can't know every perspective, we can't know every story. And so the way to do that is really to listen and to be okay with deep complexities. So I think that's one of the things, if I was to say a frustration point, is when I'm asked to simplify a conflict too much, or to simplify a situation too much. And I don't know if you feel that as well, but sometimes, you know, in marketing work, or, you know, you're given sort of, you know, sum this up for us in a sound bite. And conflict is complex. Infrastructure, history, the intersection between personal history, between systemic oppressions, between, you know, just situations that happened, is so complex that I think an attitude that's really important is to be able to live with that complexity, and really want to dig deeper than, oh, this, in this neighborhood they're fighting because they're Muslim and Hindu, and so that's the only conflict that they have in that community, you know, which is, you know, not the case. There's so much complexity, intersectionality, and more than we can learn and understand. So I think sitting in the space of awe and wonder of the complexity of humanity, and then the humility to understand that I might have 20 years experience in peace building, but I'm learning something new every single day. And I'm learning it from the teenagers who have a shorter lifespan than I have had, and already know so much and have experienced so much. So I guess learning mindset, humility, and the ability to sit with, live with complexity are really key attitudes for peace building.
Thank you. Jill, would you add to any of that? What would be on your list of peace attitudes?
That's a good start. Those are really good. I think maybe the only addition I would make is, well, be ready for the unexpected, and give people grace. There's in peace, like Sarah said, it's so complicated, and you run into people in your life, in your world, who you don't know what they're going through. So give people grace for what they're learning. And, I often think about our nonprofit or our industry as, we're not doing brain surgery. We're giving books, we're connecting people. There's really not an emergency here, except in the long term, where we want to help people have better relationships and help people change their outcomes. And that's so important. And to value what you're doing, because people can devalue what we're doing. But I think those are most important. Just be ready, and be ready for change, be ready for the unexpected, and always be willing to take a step back and grant that grace.
Thank you. In your listenings, and I know that each of you are serving different people and have a different way of doing it, but what is some of the feedback that you're hearing, or maybe even before you get started, what are you hearing from the people that you're serving, and what it means to them, what you do, or what how they would talk about their own experiences and problems, or even triumphs? I guess it doesn't all have to be about problems, but what are you hearing, Jill?
So we have a great pleasure. In the past, we've gotten a lot of letters from caregivers and from children, just being thankful for the opportunity to hear their mom and to have the story and to reconnect, because it has helped heal. And they'll ask, when can my mom do this again? How often can she do this? And those are always very wonderful to hear. And now we've expanded our programs some, so that we're getting to work with moms after they go home. And which is really very difficult, because they've had even though they've been in prison, they've had a protected environment, and there's things they haven't had. So they're having all this complexity and learning. And when I speak with them, a lot of times I hear it did make a difference. My son told me he kept years ago, we used to use cassettes. Well, Mom, I kept the cassettes. And when I get upset, I put it in and listen to you read. And that's just beautiful. And then the moms being able to say, you helped me learn, in addition to my other learnings, that it's important to communicate, and that's important to share stories and share activities. So we've had, one of the things we always hear is, thank you for your kindness, thank you for coming, thank you for treating us like people. You don't have to give your Saturdays to do this. And that, to me, says a lot. So we have some pretty good feedback.
Wonderful. How about you, Sarah?
Yeah, I mean, I think I touched on it a little bit before, but a lot of the kids, they are so grateful to learn from other kids. They're that the chance to exchange ideas with kids that were sort of forbidden to them to speak to interact with, and make these new friendships, and really friendships that they never thought was possible. So I think opening their eyes to new possibilities, definitely all of them, we had like 99% say that they had more moments of joy in their life because of Play for Peace. And that also might sound, not terribly important in the world as it is, but when you think of a child's development and you think of their place in the world and what some children are facing in their lives, giving them a few moments of joy and connection is actually really huge. So moments of joy, moments of hope. So hope for the future, where they might be in a surrounding where even the adults in their lives are quite depressed and feeling hopeless. And so for them not to take that on and have other exposure to the world where they can see these glimmers of lights, this glimmer of hope is really important. Feeling safer regardless of where they are with their social network, moving through the world, feeling a little bit safer. Also feelings of compassion. So by receiving compassion, by teaching compassion, they actually feel more compassionate themselves. And so that's another attribute or another outcome. And then the other big one is just having more friends from different backgrounds. So having a wider social network from different perspectives. That's sort of the official feedback we hear, but we do hear a lot of kids asking, you know, when are you coming back to the teens all the time? Then, you know, the teens sort of experiencing this for the first time and saying, I wish I had had this at a kid. Every child, there's so many times I've heard youth and adults say every child should have the opportunity to play for peace, and sort of using that not just as the organization, but as the term, every child in their life should have the opportunity to play for peace. And so that is really, really moving.
Thank you. Well, is there anything else coming up that you would like to ask each other or share with each other? I feel like we've gone quite a few different places with our thinking here and covered a lot of ground. That's beautiful what you guys are doing. I think we'll close. I think I'm going to give you each a chance to kind of give a final, I call them megaphone messages. If you could get everybody's ear in the whole world to listen to you right now, what would you say, you know, in a minute or less type of thing? I mean, you know, I'm not timing you, but Sarah, what would be your message?
My message with everyone right now, we are exposed to so much on the news and social media of all the dark and terrible things that are going on in the world. But just to tap into and look for these stories of amazing people around the globe in your community, in your family, maybe even in your network, who are doing acts of kindness, acts of service that you might not even have heard about. And there is so much good in the world. So I would just encourage everyone to seek out those pieces of news, seek out the organizations that might bring you joy and connection in your life. If you're interested in Play for Peace, of course, reach out to us and see how you can get involved. We have volunteers from across the globe that help either locally in their own communities or virtually to our global office. But regardless if it's Play for Peace or if it's for another organization, consider, you know, using your time to connect with others and grow and learn yourself. So I hope that that can be of help to others.
Thank you. And you know, you kind of said, you know, people are doing it, and for we still have a long ways to go, obviously, as a humanity, but peace is not upcoming or later. There is peace now. Not for everyone. We're like we were talking about that we don't all aren't on the same boat and not the equality. But if you're listening to this, you know, you know that there are places you can know that there are places where you can connect into and communities you can connect into because somebody's doing something in your community. And even if it doesn't, I mean, I'm not saying your life can change into this whole peace bomb forever and ever and ever and ever. But we have to create those moments, those take kind of the next step for ourselves personally, and then if there's a community that is meaningful to us, we can. Anyway, the point is, peace is right now. It is on the earth. People like you are waking up every morning and doing their calling, and it's just that's going to grow too. And anyone who's listening, that you can connect into that in some way. Jill, what's your message?
Well, I want to say thank you to Sarah for the work that she does with Play for Peace. That's incredible. And Jennifer, thank you, because this is so important to let others know what's going on in the world and who's working for peace. Because Sarah was bad news, and we need to hear the good news. There's so much good news. My message to everyone is to please read to your children. Read to your children, read to your children, read to your children. Even if they can read, keep reading to your children, because they can understand more than they can read. And that's where that's, I think, maybe the only place now that we gain a common ground. Because if you talk to a child now, there's still children who know the Three Bears. They know the story. There's still children who know Elephant and Piggy, and if you don't know that one, look it up. But there's beautiful stories about friends and about family and learning together. And we can gain a lot from having some shared language. I think it's important to recognize and respect folks, even if they've made a mistake, even if they're imprisoned. There's a lot of folks who are imprisoned because they made a mistake and got caught, and that will happen. But there's a lot of us who could be imprisoned because we made mistakes. So to not judge someone just because they've been incarcerated, because a lot of people get their lives taken away and never get them back. And so to respect all, and then just to, if folks would like to know about Women's Storybook Project, please look us up online. At this point, we are only in Texas, but there are so many programs around the country and around the world who are doing the same work. And if you're looking for one of them, we'd be happy to try and help you find an organization near you. But yeah, please come visit us. Please come visit our website. And that's all I've got.
Thank you so much, Sarah and Jill. Thank you for spending time with me. And yes, we will see you. Thank you for the listeners.